No Small Endeavor is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today. Smart choice. Make another smart choice with Auto Quote Explorer to compare rates from multiple car insurance companies all at once. Try it at progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Companies and Affiliates, not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy. Hey there. Did you know that we have a newsletter? Just imagine if you could have one of your favorite ethics professors send you a list of things to reflect on, think about, practical actions with which to experiment, all on your way to sorting through what it might mean to live a good life. Well, that is the NSE Notebook. I riff on themes and topics related to the show and our guests. Sign up for my NSE Notebook today at nosmallendeavor.com/newsletter. I'm Lee C. Camp, and this is No Small Endeavor, exploring what it means to live a good life.
I was never a kid that sang in the mirror, holding my hairbrush.
That's Amy Grant, whose career as a world-renowned singer-songwriter has earned her 6 Grammys, a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, Kennedy Center honors, and much more.
It's really been since last summer's accident that I have been more aware of my inner critic. A little over a year ago, our family started going to therapy.
Today, Amy opens up about the struggles of her past and present, everything from recovering from a brain injury and throat surgery to navigating a very public divorce and sharp public criticism, all while pursuing spiritual practices that cut through the clamor of a life lived in the spotlight. All coming right up. It's summertime, and that means I'm now planning some of my summer adventures with my lovely wife, Laura. But wherever summer takes us, we all need nourishment that keeps up with our daily adventures. So I'm quite pleased to have just learned about Ka'Chava. Here's my experience so far, that the Ka'Chava whole body meal shake first tastes great. I must say, I thought it might not be possible, given that it is chock full of amazing stuff like 26 vitamins and minerals, 85 plus superfoods and nutrients, all to keep your body and mind nourished all day. I love me some coconut, so I immediately tried the coconut acai and was honestly surprised how great it tasted. I was also especially pleased to see that the 25 grams of protein in each serving is plant-based. So fill your day with Ka'Chava. Go to Ka'Chava.com and use code ENDEAVOR for 15% off your next order. That's Ka'Chava.com, Kachava.com, code ENDEAVOR for 15% off. Lately, my lovely wife, Laura, and I have been trying to clean up the way we do a lot of our chores and errands to simplify our lives. And so one of the ways we've tried to do that is to clean up the way we shop for groceries. And so recently we gave Thrive Market a shot. And honestly, we're a big fan. You can get the same high quality brands you love, but for less and without compromising your standards. They actually ban over 1,000 ingredients that are still allowed in U.S. products. And the site is super easy to shop. You can filter by diet, like gluten-free, paleo, keto, low sugar, vegan, so you're not wasting time reading every label. It's not just food. Thrive has supplements, household items, and clean beauty too. All vetted and all way more affordable than you or I expect. And the shipping, fast and carbon neutral. Head over to thrivemarket.com/endeavor to get 30% off your first order and a free $60 gift. That's thrivemarket.com/endeavor, thrivemarket.com/endeavor. Hello, friends. One of the things I've taught students for many years now is that one of the most important things they can do is pay attention to their meta habits. Big habits that leave lots of things in their wake, and that this is key to living life well. For centuries, the cardinal virtues were thought of as just such meta habits, profound practices that have a disproportionately large impact upon your life. The 4 cardinal virtues: courage, temperance, prudence, and justice. They were considered essential to a good life, but today we hardly talk about them. Most people can't even name them. That's why we're launching a special 4-part series exclusively on NSE+. In this series, I'll take a deep dive into these virtues, what they mean, why they matter, and how they shape a meaningful life. Think of it like a private college course, except it's way practical. Join us on NSE+ to start listening today. Sign up at nosmallendeavor.com and click Join NSE+. I'm Lacey Camp. This is No Small Endeavor, exploring what it means to live a good life. One of the great gifts I was given in my mid-30s was a community of friends who knew how to practice a healthy vulnerability. It sometimes scared the daylights out of me, people sharing their deepest selves, their weaknesses, failures, inner dialogue, mixed motivations, grave temptations, character defects, as well as their victories and the things that made them happy and the moments that made them feel alive. And out of such a context, I began to be convinced that a properly, prudently exercised vulnerability is something like a life superpower. There arise new possibilities for life, new possibilities for human connection. Life itself takes on an integrity, even when one's life is still utterly a mess. So I particularly find myself drawn to friends and acquaintances who freely practice such, honesty. And this interview today with Amy Grant is one of those moments in which I felt so grateful to be present to someone who appears to have had years of practicing such honesty, such vulnerability. And of course, it was a pleasure to visit with Vince Gill, Amy's husband, before the taping, and then to sit with Amy for a couple of hours. We're pleased to share this interview, and if you'd like more, you can get the unabridged version wherever you get your podcasts. Amy Grant is a musician, American singer-songwriter. Her career began as a teenager, being offered her first recording contract before her 16th birthday, originally in the contemporary Christian music genre, then crossing over to pop in the 80s and 90s. She sold more than 30 million albums, has won 6 Grammy Awards, 26 Dove Awards. She's been honored with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame and is a recipient of the prestigious Kennedy Center honors. And I'm very grateful to be with you here in your house today, Amy. Thanks so much for having us over today.
Thank you. It's great to have you, Lee.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to the conversation. You and I share a heritage in a particular Christian tradition that has practiced a cappella hymn singing. And so I wonder, when you think back of some of your earliest childhood memories, what gets evoked for you in thinking about a cappella hymn singing?
Oh, that is my go-to. For whatever reason, this memory popped into my head. I was visiting my mom in the last year of her life. She passed away of dementia in 2011. And I sang into a rousing verse and chorus of Revive Us Again.
Oh, nice.
And I said, do you know that song, Mom? And she said, no, but I love it. Keep singing. Yeah.
You've also talked a lot about the influence of your great-grandparents, A.M. and Mimi, I think you called her.
Yes,
Mimi
great
Burton.
Mimi.
Yeah. And my first 6 or 7 years as a professor, I spent every day going into a building named after A.M. Burton, your great-grandfather. And his sort of legendary generosity is something that's still known, I think, pretty widely in Nashville. But what do you think that memory or whatever you saw of your great-grandparents in generosity, how has that informed you, or how has that impacted you, you think?
Oh, my goodness. Well, when you first said like Mimi and Granddad, we say it Mimi, like
Mimi, yeah.
It's kind of a Southern way. And Mimi lived until my junior year in college. And so I knew her very well. And Granddad passed away right before I turned 6. But I loved visits to their farm. And I grew up several years of my childhood on Shies Hill Road, which was a road cut into the backside of their farm. And on that road was my grandmother's house, our house, 7 homes of different cousins. What I knew growing up from the time I played on that farm was that at the point that the second of those 2 passed, that they had already given everything away. And so we lived on that farm on borrowed time. And I would say that was the most shaping thing for me, that I never presumed that my great-grandfather's hard work, developing the life and casualty office downtown, the insurance company, all of his hard work, it was his to give to whomever he chose to give it. And to me, that was just like that subcutaneous understanding.
Yeah.
People work hard to have the life they have, and they can do whatever they choose to do with what comes from that. And I knew that we played on that farm on borrowed time. And when my great-grandparents died, they made a gift of the farm, at least. I think at the time in the 80s, it was about a $13 million gift. And I was so proud of them. And I received 2 matching lamps, which are still in my home, and a daybed. And that, to me, how do I say how that's informed my life? You know, I've given my money away as I've made it.
Yeah.
Just by example. And I just think, what we think about life and how we see other people affects the world in which we live.
Yeah. You've got a citation from him in your book Mosaics, where he says, life is made up of golden chances, opportunities to do good. One lost is lost forever. If we miss doing a kindness to a friend, we can never do that kindness again. If we might speak a pleasant word or offer a bit of worthwhile counsel or advice and fail to do so, we can never have just that opportunity again. Giving is a way of life. That's such a beautiful, if we keep that kind of lens in front of us, the sort of ways that would inform our days in beautiful ways. You ended up later at another church where my wife Laura was raised, and I remember through the years her telling me about you playing some of your first performances there at the old coffee shop next door. And when you look back, maybe 45 years now, at that 15-year-old that you were doing those early performances, how would you describe who that young 15, 16-year-old young woman was?
I feel like so much of my life, I was just drafting behind my sisters. My sisters the oldest was not quite 8.5 years older than I, and then 6.5, not quite 2 years older. And so I sort of effortlessly slipped into every circle in the shadow of my siblings. I never felt like the center or the focus. All my ideas came, through them. The 2 oldest ones went to school in Boston, kind of got involved with the hippie church, which led us going to Belmont. But everything in life, I was just like, it was like watching the future roll through them toward me. Here comes marriage, here comes children, and here comes menopause. What a great location to be in. And then when I found my life very different from my sisters because it became public, I still felt so insulated by my family. Even when we didn't spend time together, I felt like my identity was, I'm the youngest of these 4 women. I saw the importance of what I did or didn't do as, well, this is how I'm spending my time. And it's just a different way, but how my sisters are involved in work, in raising kids, stay at home, working out in the workforce. All of it was like, I had such a clear example of women I dearly loved who were not doing it all wrong and not doing it all right, that were also spending all of their time and energy invested in lives that mattered to them. And it helped me to see my life in the context of women. This is how we live.
Yeah. There was an article I came across, a Washington Post article, that was, I'd never thought about this particular context, but a historian, John J. Thompson, was talking about thinking about what's happening in Koinonia bookstore coffee house, where you're first kind of playing, doing some of your first playing. And he talks about how you got to realize that late 60s, early 70s, people are disillusioned by race riots, assassinations, the Vietnam War. And then you have, to use language you just used, Jesus and hippie church. Thompson says you got Jesus as a kind of countercultural peacenik, and that you're kind of doing some of your earliest work in that kind of context. It's a Jesus who's kind of jarring against some of the domestication of Jesus or domestication of religion, and it's a Jesus who points toward a kind of peaceableness or a different kind of way in the world. Does that resonate with you in any way, his interpretation, or did you think very self-consciously at that time about what was going on culturally and the way in which Jesus or Christian faith fit in that context?
I mean, I can't honestly tell you I remember what I was thinking as a 15-year-old. I do remember growing up in the Church of Christ. I was not reared by parents who said if people don't believe just like us, if they don't believe just like we do, they are mistaken. Or my parents never had what I would describe in one way as a narrower mindset. You know, the Church of Christ was like, don't add a jot or a tittle to the Bible. And I think I was brought up in a family that was more embracing of the mystery of God. And when my sisters came back from Boston and said, hey, there's this coffee shop downtown and it's connected to a church. Well, the preacher at that church was an old friend of my parents, but my dad was in leadership at a more conservative church that we loved. I went to church camp every summer. I felt such security in the love of God. And I knew God loved the world. And so then all of a sudden to be brought into an environment that like all kinds of people were showing up, to me, I was going, oh man, God loves the world. This is like, I mean, these are like long-haired, nobody has shoes on. And it was, I was a little past the actual hippie movement because I was born in the end of 1960. And so everything that was happening in California, that they made the Jesus movie out of it, this was kind of whatever, a late wave of that. But there were just so many lives transformed by love. I mean, what life is not transformed by love? And it was specifically love in the name of Jesus, but how that affected all of us to be involved in each other's lives, to help, I have this thing that you need. You have this thing that I need, just such a sense of community. Yeah. And that was the experience that felt, I'd never been involved with something that felt so come as you are, nobody is excluded. That was amazing. And then simultaneously, I'm going to an all-girls prep school. It was not a Christian school, but every Wednesday we had chapel. It was just part of the prep school experience. And I sat through one chapel program one time that, in my opinion, was very political. And I said to myself, God, you could use some PR down here. I mean, nobody's talking love, and they're really talking politics. And I went home and started writing. I was having this life and heart and spirit broadening experience at this hippie church. I was in a very academic world. My father's a doctor, very academic world, Monday through Friday. And I loved my friends. I loved that. And I thought, I wonder if I could cross-pollinate these worlds. I'm not asking them to join anything. I just want them to know they're loved. And I felt the immediacy of how being loved can change a life. I'll never forget one time when a woman got on stage and said, I'm so scared I'm sleeping with a man who's not my husband. And, I was just like, I had to go pop some popcorn. This is like better than a movie. I mean, people are being real here. And then to have people just getting up in front of everybody and not being ashamed of saying, I'm a wreck, my life's a wreck. And I think that affect my desire to share that kind of love response to vulnerability with people from all parts of my life. Because I thought, what have any of us got to lose? We are all a mess. And we are all loved. Yeah, and somehow that set me on this music path. And no one could be more surprised than I am.
In those early days of doing music, if I remember the story correctly, Brown Bannister perhaps communicated to you that you had gotten a first concert proposal, $300, And you thought you were going to have to pay $300 to do the concert?
Yes, yeah. I know. I wasn't in the phone book,
Yeah.
but, people used to read album credits, and my producer was Brown Bannister. He was findable in the phone book. Lakeside Amusement Park in Denver, Colorado was having, I guess it was like a Christian music festival, and they called him. And so this was the summer after my freshman year. I was saving money for my freshman year. My parents were obviously paying the tuition, but I had to, I guess I got some kind of allowance, but I wanted some cash in the bank. And he said, "You've been asked to come play at Lakeside Amusement Park for $300. And I was like, good news, bad news. I was like, $300? God, I think I've got $500 saved. If I blow $300 on Lakeside Amusement Park, I'll have like nothing. But can I also say, I think that was inherent in how I felt about what I had to offer. Who in the world would pay to hear me sing? It didn't even matter that I'd make a record, that I had already made a record.
Yeah.
It was like, recording has never been easy for me. I can feel comfortable singing. All of a sudden they hit record and I see those red lights and I'm like, but I love singing. I love what music does to people.
You're listening to No Small Endeavor and our interview with Amy Grant. I love hearing from you. Tell us what you're reading, who you're paying attention to, or send us feedback about today's episode. You can reach me at lee@nosmallendeavor.com. You can get show notes for this episode in your podcast app or wherever you listen. These notes include links to resources mentioned in this episode, as well as a PDF of my complete interview notes and a full transcript. If you've not already signed up, go over to nosmallendeavor.com and sign up for our free newsletter called NSE Notebook, where I share various behind-the-scenes commentary on themes we develop on No Small Endeavor. It's been a delight to hear from so many of you who are on that email list, and we'd love to welcome you too if you're not among that happy number. Coming up, Amy and I discuss her more recent life, including a traumatic brain injury that has affected her memory, and the ways in which her recognition of the brokenness of her own life and her seeking to honor the vulnerability of others has played a key role in her life. We are most excited to announce that we'll be having our second NSC Plus book club with an author on June 26 at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Professor Rebecca DeYoung will join us to discuss her book, Glittering Vices. It's a great book. Order your copy of the book and mark your calendars. If you're not yet a member of NSA Plus, join at the link in the show notes or visit nosmallendeavor.com and click Join NSC Plus. Show up with questions and get ready to sit in on a great conversation. Last year's been pretty wonderful and I guess tumultuous for you, and tumultuous in a recent accident that has affected your memory some. And then at the same time, this prestigious honor at the Kennedy Center. What are some of the highs and lows then of this experience over the last 12 months for you?
Oh my goodness. The last 12 months have been a real gift to me. I was in a biking accident and I don't remember it, so I don't have any trauma from that. But that led to a surgery to repair my shoulder in the end of September. And then the Kennedy Center honors was in December. And then I had another surgery that happened. It was actually on my throat the end of January because I had a pre-existing cyst, thyroglossal cyst. Anyway, that unbeknownst to me was actually affecting my singing. It was getting harder and harder for me to sing. And something about that bike accident caused the growth of that cyst to go into hyperdrive. And so it was interfering with my swallowing. I had to have it taken out. And so these are the gifts from that year. So the end of July, I had everything came to a grinding stop. I did have a head injury. I had to be on no screens, no phone, nothing for a couple of months. They had to wait to make sure that my brain was okay before they could operate on my shoulder. My friend who was on the bike ride with me said, you kept saying over and over 3 things in the emergency room. You kept saying, something's wrong with my shoulder. I can't believe I still have all my teeth. And I needed this. The curiosity in me has explored the fact that I kept saying those things over and over again. I needed this. I have just tried to say, how all did I need it? And one of the things is, because I started singing so young and because I had people around me that dreamed and schemed with me and toured with me and who managed me, who booked me, there was always a group around me who also paid their bills because of what I did. My life was laid out always in advance. And in a way that prioritized things about my time that it wasn't until everything totally stopped that I thought, I wonder, on a level playing field, had I not ever sung, how would I have invested differently? And in the short run, what I saw was I had the chance to invest in a new way with my adult children who, thinking they might have lost their mom, and this was 2 years after I also had surprise open heart surgery that was totally fine. I feel better than ever. But all of us can be oblivious or unaware of how we feel about our investment in another person or their investment in us. And that really was kind of a slap to all of us, saying, what a gift we have in each other. Even at the Kennedy Center, I was so glad I didn't have to sing for that. I was so glad I didn't have to actually say very much. And I did go up and receive the award at a private dinner. I didn't have a speech. I just thought, all I did was wiggle my toes. And I just said, I will speak the truth of whatever comes into my head. The overwhelming gift of feeling, I do feel like I see life through a different lens since last summer. And I think there are some things that are probably changed about me. I don't know if it was the blow to the head. I feel like part of my filter is gone.
For good or for ill, I suppose.
Yeah. I just feel so much gratitude for right now, all the possibility of right now. And it makes everything more precious because for the first time in my life, I have felt very aware that the resources of time, talent, treasure, ability, all those things, our resources are limited.
Yeah, right.
And so what we do matters, and we can't do everything.
Yeah. I'm struck by something you just said that I want to follow up on. So, wiggle my toes and speak the truth as it comes into my head. That seems to me pretty worth meditating on at some length. And I can speculate, but why wiggle your toes?
The morning of my mother's funeral, I was rushing around. I had planned several things to say. I had sort of loose notes. I got a call from Cheryl Crow, who lives in Nashville. She's one of 3 sisters, also a great relationship with her mother. And we don't see each other often, but we have a really dear friendship. And she happened to call me. And that morning I said, I was so rattled. I said, I'm getting ready to go speak at my mom's service, and I'm so afraid I'm just going to start crying and not be able to function. I think this is what her mother told her. But she said, wherever you are, wiggle your toes. If you will wiggle your toes, it will connect you to the moment. It will remind you that you're in the present. And you'll return to yourself. You'll return to the moment in which you stand. And that advice was very helpful that day. And it came from Cheryl. It's been helpful so many times in my life.
I suspect I'm going to remember that one. Yeah, that's really helpful. You said there at the beginning that you suspect a lot of this is just about you try to be honest. And then you followed up with life is messy. And that does seem to me to be something that's come out consistently in your work, is that, a lot of your songs point to the fact that life is messy and that life is difficult. And there's a lot of grief, regardless of where we're coming from. We all experience various forms of grief. We have to go through the process of grieving the pain of brokenness, our own brokenness, the brokenness of others, things that we may or may not have had a contributing choice in.
Mm-hmm.
But when you think about coming to be aware of the brokenness of the world, your own brokenness, and trying then to be honest about that, any key memories or experiences that led you to that kind of place of being honest about the messiness?
Not being an observer of my life, I don't know. I just wound up that way.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I look at our culture right now. There's a lot of lines drawn in the sand. And there's so many things about the Bible that I don't understand. There are things that I read and I go, oh, Lord, that's terrifying. I don't like any of this. And so that whole thing about how I see the world is, I might not agree with someone, or I might feel like whatever their words they're saying might feel like nails on chalkboard to me, or I'll think, but I have to immediately say, everybody's allowed their free choice. They are doing what makes sense to them. And I got to wrap my head around the fact that we're one. I got to wrap my head around the fact that we are mankind. For God so loved all of us. It's just like, that is, and I'm going to tell you, I know I'm a weirdo, but part of my mind every day goes to that.
Huh.
Because I just think from a distance, a bunch of women can show up at a cocktail party that is a benefit for something we all believe in. And because I'm a woman, I know. You walk in, you look in, and you go, I might have made a different fashion choice because I didn't know how everybody was going to be dressed. I just came off the farm. Up your game, Amy. I'm just like, shh, shut up, inner monologue. And then curiosity. I wonder if they've had some work done. Okay, these 4 people have so clearly had a boob job. Do you wish you'd ever had a boob job? I mean, all that, you don't even ask for it. It just all comes to your mind. And all those things, but all that stuff is from a distance. And then you get all the way up on somebody. And then all of a sudden it's just like, we are all part of the human story. We're all part of the human story.
So I want to go to the voice in your head you mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
and talk a little bit about critique and criticism. And so first, the inner critic. Do you deal with inner critic a lot?
Yes. I don't know that I acknowledge that I dealt with an inner critic, but I think everybody does. But I tend to be able to quickly frame things in a positive way. And it's really been since last summer's accident that I have been more aware of my inner critic. A little over a year ago, our family started going to therapy. There was an event that was private that is now resolved, but the invitation for all of us to understand our family system and how we all fit into it and how we saw each other led to Vince and I continuing the opportunity for therapy. This last Christmas, 5 months after I'm still regaining my footing, I reached out to my kids. It was my first stepping my toe back into work, doing some Christmas shows. And I reached out to everybody saying, I have almost no bandwidth for Christmas. And so I have energy to try to do one present. If money were no object, say 1 or 2 things that you would appreciate receiving at Christmas. Several of our children said, could we continue therapy? And all of them have said over time, hey, I'm really not talking about any of you. I'm just trying to wrap my arms around my own life. I said, perfect. And I've been in therapy off and on my whole life, but because I'm trying to see myself with new eyes within my own family system, within my work world, I was invited to a therapy session. I have been invited to multiple therapy sessions with my children, always going, what are we going to talk about? Oh, us. But my inner critic was actually discussed in therapy with one of my children because of her inner critic.
Huh.
And it's made me much more aware. But I, in an attempt to navigate a life that has involved a lot of changes. I was a very public person. I went through a divorce. I was still in the throes of raising young children. I married Vince Gill, another public person. We had a child. I have been running long and hard, trying to do the best with what I have, trying to respect myself and others. And now, as an empty nester, I am having the opportunity to go back and look at things in my life that I just tied a neat bow around that honestly require some real grieving. And grief is an experience to be moved through. And grief can be moved through, even loss of the most important person in your life. If you move through grief, you arrive on the other side having come to some kind of peace with the change. And if you don't grieve, then you feel things that keep you stuck. You feel regret. You feel guilt. You feel a lot of things that there's not really an upside. And so, wouldn't it be beautiful if I gave myself the gift every day of processing some grief? Because we all hold so much grief. It's wordless.
Going to take a short break, but coming right up, Amy talks about dealing with publicity and criticism and the words Billy Graham once spoke to her, and more. Hey friends, Lee Seacamp of No Small Endeavor here. Hey, would you like to expand the community of people talking about the things you like to talk about? Here's an easy way to do that. And I would be most grateful if you were to do so. Go over to your favorite podcast listening app, click on Reviews, and leave No Small Endeavor a glowing 5-star review. Tell folks perhaps about some episode you liked in particular, and tell folks what you like generally about No Small Endeavor, the topics, the dashingly handsome, articulate host, or whatever it is that floats your boat. That will help more people find us, which will expand the community of people talking about the things you like to talk about, especially when you make it one of those 5-star reviews. Thanks. So let me pivot then from internal critic to external critic. You've clearly had plenty of external critics through the years, and at least some that even a superficial overview of your career points to things like when you cross over from CCM to pop, or when a major Christian distributor decides not to distribute your Christmas album, your latest Christmas album. What have been internal mechanisms or habits that have helped you learn to navigate external criticism?
Well, something I inherited, I say I inherited it from my father, but maybe it was just unique to me, is I was just born with a high level of oblivion. I don't think my father was oblivious, but...
That can be a gift, though.
Oh, it's definitely a gift.
Yeah.
And another thing is, I've had so many opportunities in my life to say, what if I tried X, Y, or Z? And I've had people help me do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I say that because I felt from the time I was young that my choice mattered. And if my choice matters, another person's choice matters as well. And so you mentioned the distributor that chose not to put out whatever Christmas project I was a part of. And I think I just instinctively see other people's choices as being the choices that they are welcome to have. And I just feel like you have to operate that way in the world. You have to be able to say, I'm so curious about what you think about this subject. And somebody can say their opinion with so much emotion, almost even an expectation. I have to be able to say back, I love hearing all of that. That is so mind broadening. I don't feel the same way. So I'm going to behave differently because I have to operate by what's coming from inside me. I've got no other script, and I can't go off your script, or then I'm really in no man's land, because at some point you're going to walk away with your script. And I feel like that's how I've tried to raise my children, is to say you have to know not just what your mind speaks, but what your body, how your body responds to the truth of something. You have to listen when you cry. You have to listen when the hairs on your arms go up. You have to listen to those things that are deeper than words in you. Whether it's an idea to do something, to walk down that dark street, to adhere to a lifestyle or a system of belief, and only you are wired the way you are wired. And I trust that the true light who gives light to every man is capable of speaking to you in that inner sanctum that only you have access.
Two years ago, I was sitting here with Vince, was where I'm sitting, and I was sitting where you're sitting. And I did ask him a little question about what's it like being married to Amy Grant. So let me ask a couple questions about marriage.
Okay.
If it's okay, in talking about the end of your first marriage, you have this passage in your book where you talk about this sense that you needed to share with Billy Graham that you thought your first marriage might be at its end. What do you remember about that conversation with him?
Well, I remember the feeling of it very well. We were in Minneapolis at what would end up being the last of his crusades, at which I sang. I'm not sure what kind of big area we were in. It was just pipe and draped into a myriad of little dressing rooms. And there was a point where I was invited to go sit on the sofa with him. And I didn't have a lot of opportunities to be with Billy Graham, but he sure was larger than life in so many ways. And he could be simultaneously bigger than life and just calmingly quiet in his presence. And, you know, that thing that just has kind of speak the truth of where I am. I was married. I had 3 children. I had fallen in love with a married man. And I already had a difficult marriage. And I felt myself just saying, I don't know where I'm going to wind up, but I think I'm incapable of doing what I have been doing anymore. And I couldn't walk on that stage with the man who held the trust of the whole world. And yeah, I just said, I I know I've been a public person of faith, and I still believe in God, and I'm headed for a divorce. I need you to know that. And he sat down and he said, I've got a bunch of children. And he said, there are a couple of them that are taking the long way home.
Mm.
And he said, we'll all get there. Mm. It's okay.
Mm.
I don't know what all he was saying, it's okay.
Yeah.
Just the words, it's okay.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah.
And then years later, he was at Flushing Meadow, and Vince and I were on a trip to New York, and we had all of our kids, and we all went to the crusade.
Hmm.
And anyway, somebody made a connection backstage for us, and we went back there, and Billy came and gave Vince the biggest hug. And me, he said, it's so good to see you. I'm so glad you're here. And I thought that's what we do with each other.
Yeah. Yeah. What are some of the things that marriage to Vince Gill has meant?
Oh my goodness. He accepts me right where I am for who I am. And I feel like I have felt the kindness and unconditional love that we express about God. I have felt it in a way through him that I've never experienced through anybody else. Mm. And he is imperfect, as am I. We know how to trigger each other to the point you'd think a rocket was going to launch. But he is a man of integrity. And he's got a great sense of humor. And I mean, almost every morning, the first thing he tries to do is make me smile. Mm. Some kind of silliness. He didn't grow up in a kumbaya world. I did. He holds his cards close to his chest, his feelings, what he thinks about anything. You know, he opts for being silly. I want the conversation to go deep. I mean, they're so...
We were talking before you came around, and he had me in stitches telling me jokes and stories.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. He loves that. And when it comes to deep talk, you know, he does not have a lot of, how to best say it. I told him, I said, I've got to have some way to tease about this with you, because I don't mean it in a critical way. But I used to go, I feel like it's ping with no pong, you know? But I said, is it fair to say about 25 words a day for the really deep stuff? And he was looking at me almost like I was criticizing him. I said, I'm just saying, like when I start to launch into something, I have to say, we're going to violate the 25-word quota here. And the other day I called him. I said, what did you do today? And he said, I stayed home all day. It was fantastic. I didn't even meet my quota. Yeah. So laughter is the best thing that he has brought to my world.
So as we get toward the end here, you've pointed to a few kind of daily practices, a daily prayer, I think you say, that you alluded to, but other daily practices, rhythms that help you?
Mm-hmm. I start every morning with thank you. Thank you. I'm so thankful to wake up, just to wake up. And daily practices. I mean, life is so different as an empty nester. It's so different.
For sure.
And so, you know, there's time in the mornings for things to be different, and time at the end of the day when you're not just like trying to make sure that the next load of laundry is in and what's everybody eating tomorrow and all that. So I feel a little bit embarrassed because of just the time freedom right now. But every morning I say thank you, and I love getting a cup of coffee, and I go outside. And if I can, I put my feet on the grass and connect with the beauty of the earth. And I just let my thoughts wander. And then I've done this at different times in my life, and I'm back into this practice, but reading a chapter of the Gospels every day. Anyway, and just the fascination with Jesus' life. Man, he created such a stir everywhere he went. And I'll be honest, it's hard to read a lot of the other stuff in the Bible for me. I have a love-hate relationship with a lot of the history in the Old Testament. It's hard for me to trust anything that involves people because I know that I'm a mess. And I read all the New Testament. I've read the Old Testament too, but I'm like, okay, people are involved. I'm just gonna woo, okay, God, I know you're in this. I just gotta trust you. If people are involved, I have to take a deep breath.
Yeah.
And so mostly what I want to hear about is Jesus. And then he says stuff that scares the ever-living daylights out of me. Like today, what I read today was about if a woman's divorced. And I'm like, Jesus, even you said it. You didn't talk about very many things. But why did you talk about divorce? People are so ugly to each other. Why did you say divorce? And then I find myself fighting with him and go, clearly, we all need help. So I have a very active imagination, and I will not go down without a fight, and I'm so glad. Every day, what I mostly say is hold on to me and don't let me go. Just hold on to me.
Yeah.
And be glorified.
Been talking to Amy Grant here at her home. Amy, thank you for honoring us and sharing your generosity, hospitality. Thank you. It's been delightful.
Thank you, Lee.
You've been listening to No Small Endeavor and our interview with Amy Grant. We gratefully acknowledge the support of Lilly Endowment Incorporated, a private philanthropic foundation supporting the causes of community development, education, and religion, and the support of the John Templeton Foundation, whose vision is to become a global catalyst for discoveries that contribute to human flourishing. Our thanks to all the stellar team that makes this show possible: Christy Bragg, Jacob Lewis, Sophie Byard, Kate Hayes, Mary Evelyn Brown, Carriet Harmon, Jason Cheesley, Audrey Griffith, and Tim Lauer. Thanks for listening, and let's keep exploring what it means to live a good life together. No Small Endeavor is a production of PRX, Tokens Media LLC, and
Great Feeling Studio.